I didn't find out I was a father in some cinematic way. No soft music, no slow realization. It was a Tuesday night, my phone buzzing on the desk while I was half asleep, surrounded by unfinished homework and empty energy drink cans. I almost didn't answer. I remember thinking it was probably a spam call or a wrong number, something I could deal with tomorrow. Instead, it was her. Her voice sounded older than I remembered, steadier, like someone who had already crossed a bridge I didn't even know existed. She didn't waste time. She said my name once, then said she had a baby. Then she said the words that knocked the air out of my chest. "He's yours." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain refused to process it. I was barely managing my own life. Rent paid late, plans always postponed, adulthood treated like something I could keep avoiding. Fatherhood belonged to other people, older people, responsible people. She told me his age, told me his name, told me she hadn't planned to call, but she couldn't do it alone anymore. While she spoke, I stared at the wall and felt something heavy settle in my stomach, like gravity had suddenly increased. When the call ended, the room felt smaller. Nothing had physically changed, but everything was different. Somewhere in the world, a child existed who shared my blood, my mistakes, my future. I sat there for a long time, phone still in my hand, thinking one thing over and over: I'm someone's father now, and I have no idea how that happened.
After the call, I didn't sleep. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the fridge and the distant sound of traffic outside. Every noise felt too loud, like the world didn't realize it was supposed to pause while I caught up. My mind kept replaying the same questions on a loop. Is this real? Is she sure? Why didn't I know sooner? What am I supposed to do? Each thought slammed into the next without leaving room to breathe. I grabbed my phone more than once, ready to text her and say there must be some mistake. I didn't send anything. I was afraid of the answer. Fear came next. Not a dramatic, panicked fear, more like a cold, creeping one that settled into my bones. I was scared of money, scared of failing, scared of being needed in a way I couldn't escape from. I imagined a tiny face looking up at me, expecting safety, and felt completely unqualified. Doubt followed right behind it. Doubt about myself, about my past choices, about whether I had anything solid to offer another human being. I had always told myself I'd grow up. Eventually. Now the eventually had shown up without asking. At some point, just before dawn, I realized something worse than the fear. This wasn't a problem I could ignore or outgrow. This was permanent. A line had been drawn between the person I was before that phone call and whoever I was going to be after. And I was standing on the wrong side of it, shaking, trying to figure out how to cross.
The first real step wasn't buying diapers or reading parenting guides. It was admitting it to myself and then to someone else. Until I said the words out loud, part of me still believed I could wake up and undo everything. I met her a few days later. She placed him in my arms with ceremony, like this was the most natural thing in the world. He was smaller than I expected, warmer too. His fingers wrapped around one of mine completely by accident and I froze. I was terrified I'd drop him or do something wrong just by breathing. "This is your son," she said. Hearing it spoken aloud hit harder than the phone call. It made it real in a way thoughts never could. I looked down at his face, scrunched, serious, unaware, and felt a strange mix of panic and responsibility crushed together. He didn't care that I was scared. He didn't care that I hadn't planned for him. He was here and he needed someone. I nodded. I didn't say much. There were no dramatic promises or sudden bursts of confidence. Just a quiet, internal decision that surprised me with its simplicity. I won't disappear. That was it. Not I'll be perfect or I know what I'm doing. Just that I would show up. I'd learn. I'd mess up. But I wouldn't leave him with the kind of absence that turns into a lifelong question mark. When I handed him back, my arms felt empty in a way I hadn't expected. For the first time, responsibility didn't feel like a burden being forced on me. It felt like something I had chosen, clumsily, imperfectly, but on purpose. And somehow that made all the difference. Accepting responsibility didn't magically make me competent. It just meant I stopped pretending I wasn't involved. The real work started with small, awkward attempts at being useful. I watched how she held him, how she checked his diaper, how she knew what each different cry meant. I asked questions that made me feel stupid. I asked them anyway. The first time I was alone with him, my hands shook. I remember thinking that every adult I'd ever known must have been faking it at first, because there was no way people were born knowing how to care for something this fragile. I moved slowly, like one wrong motion could break him. Feeding took forever. Changing him was a disaster. I put the diaper on backwards and didn't realize until he peed through it. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Mostly I just felt tired in a way I'd never felt before, like my brain and body were both running on empty. But there were moments, tiny ones, that kept me going. The way he calmed down when I held him against my chest. The way his breathing matched mine after a while, like he trusted me enough to sync up. Those moments didn't erase the fear, but they softened it. I started measuring my days differently. Not by what I got done, but by whether he was fed, clean, and safe. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't heroic, it was just care repeated over and over. Somewhere in that routine, I realized I was learning not just how to look after him, but how to slow down, how to pay attention, how to put someone else first without feeling like I was losing myself entirely. I didn't have a manual, but I was writing something like one clumsy day at a time. No one warned me how tired doubt could make you. Not just physically tired, but mentally worn down, like every decision. Even tiny ones came with a silent question attached. Are you doing this wrong? The nights were the worst. He'd wake up crying, and I'd sit on the edge of the bed half asleep, rocking him back and forth while my thoughts spiraled. I worried about money at 3 in the morning, about the future at 4. About whether he'd grow up resenting me sometime around sunrise. Fatigue turned every fear into something louder and more convincing. There were moments when I caught myself thinking about my old life, sleeping in, spontaneous plans, the freedom to be irresponsible. That thought always came with guilt right behind it. What kind of father misses a life that didn't include his own child? The shame of that question sat heavy on my chest. I messed up more than once. I lost my patience. I raised my voice in frustration and immediately hated myself for it. I stared at his tiny face afterward, apologizing to someone who couldn't understand words yet, hoping somehow he could feel the intent behind them. Some days, just getting through felt like a victory. I learned to accept that. I learned that exhaustion didn't mean failure. It meant that doubt wasn't proof I was unfit. It was proof I cared enough to question myself. I didn't feel strong. I felt stretched thin. But even on the hardest days, when I thought I had nothing left to give, I still showed up. And slowly, painfully slowly, I started to believe that maybe that was what strength actually looked like. I thought becoming a father would be something I had to survive alone, some personal trial I was meant to endure in silence. That belief didn't last long. I was too tired, too overwhelmed, and too obviously struggling for people not to notice. My mother was the first to really step in. She didn't lecture me or say, "I told you so." She just showed up with food, took the baby from my arms without judgment, and told me to sleep. When I woke up a few hours later, I cried, not because I was sad, but because I hadn't realized how badly I needed help until someone gave it to me. Friends surprised me too. Some drifted away, uncomfortable with how fast my life had changed. Others leaned in. They held him awkwardly, asked how I was really doing, and adjusted plans around my new reality without making me feel like a burden. One of them told me quietly that watching me try this hard made him rethink his own future. Even his mother, despite everything complicated and unspoken between us, became a partner in a way I hadn't expected. We weren't perfect. We argued. We misunderstood each other. But there was a shared understanding that this little person mattered more than our pride. Support didn't fix everything. It didn't erase the fear or the fatigue, but it made the weight bearable. It reminded me that growing up doesn't mean doing everything alone. It means knowing when to let others help you carry what's too heavy. For the first time, I stopped seeing myself as a kid pretending to be an adult. I was part of something bigger now, and I wasn't walking it alone. My days stopped belonging only to me. That was the biggest change, and the one I felt the most. Time became something I planned around naps, feedings, and tiny routines that somehow ruled everything. I used to measure a good day by how much I accomplished. Now I measure it by how calm he was when he fell asleep. Simple things became complicated. Leaving the house meant packing a bag like I was preparing for a short expedition. Showers were rushed. Meals were eaten cold. My phone filled up with photos of him instead of messages about weekend plans I no longer made. At first, I resented it. I didn't say that out loud, not even to myself, but it was there. I missed the ease of my old life, the version of me who could be spontaneous without consequences. Then one day I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd actually felt fulfilled back then. There was a strange peace in the repetition. Wake up, feed him, hold him, watch him sleep. The world outside felt louder and more chaotic, but inside this new routine, things made sense. I had a purpose that didn't depend on success, money, or approval. It depended on presence. I started making better choices without thinking about them too much, going home instead of staying out, saving money instead of spending it carelessly. Not because someone told me to, but because it felt natural now. My priorities had shifted quietly without asking for permission. My life was smaller in some ways, but it was deeper, and for the first time that trade didn't feel like a loss. Joy didn't arrive all at once. It didn't announce itself or fix everything. It showed up in fragments, tucked inside ordinary moments I almost missed. The first time he smiled at me, not gas, not coincidence, but a real, deliberate smile. I felt something loosen in my chest, like a knot I'd been carrying since that first phone call finally gave way. He looked at me like I was something familiar, something safe. The idea that I could be that for someone else was overwhelming. There were other moments too. The way his eyes followed me around the room. The sound of his laugh, sudden and bright, cutting through a bad day like sunlight through clouds. I started catching myself talking to him about everything, my fears, my plans, the stupid little details of life, knowing he didn't understand but feeling heard anyway. Pride crept in quietly. I felt it when I calmed him down after a long cry, when I managed a smooth diaper change at 3 in the morning, when he fell asleep on my chest and stayed there. These weren't things I could brag about. They wouldn't impress anyone, but they mattered to me more than anything else ever had. For the first time, joy wasn't tied to achievement or approval. It came from connection, from being needed, from realizing that despite all my doubts I was doing something right. I was still scared, still tired, still figuring things out. But now there were moments that made me smile for no reason at all, and that felt like hope taking root. I wish I could say that joy erased the mistakes. It didn't. If anything, it made them feel heavier. When you care this much, every misstep lands harder. There were days I lost my temper and hated myself for it. Days I forgot something important or made a decision that felt wrong the second it was made. I compared myself constantly to other fathers, to imaginary versions of who I thought I should be by now. Every comparison ended the same way, with me coming up short. What I had to learn, slowly and painfully, was that failure didn't disqualify me. It taught me. I learned to apologize. To his mother, to my family, and even to him. I learned to own my mistakes instead of hiding from them, because pretending to be flawless only made things worse. Growth wasn't dramatic. It didn't look like a montage or a turning point. It looked like doing a little better today than I did yesterday, like catching my frustration before it turned into anger, like asking for help before everything fell apart. I started to understand that growing up wasn't about suddenly knowing all the answers. It was about staying present when things got hard, about choosing responsibility again and again, even when it was uncomfortable. I was still failing, just not in the same ways. And for the first time, that felt like progress. One day, without realizing it at first, I stopped asking myself whether I was ready to be a father. The question just faded. In its place was something quieter and more practical. What does he need right now? I noticed a change in small ways. The way I woke up before he cried, already reaching for him. The way my body moved, automatically confident instead of cautious. I wasn't constantly checking myself anymore, second-guessing every touch. Trust had built itself slowly, brick by brick, until it was just there. He started recognizing me, not just as a familiar face, but as his person. He leaned toward me when he was tired. He relaxed faster in my arms than anywhere else. That kind of reliance is terrifying when you first feel it. It means you matter. It means you can hurt someone deeply if you're careless. But it also did something unexpected. It grounded me. I began to think in longer timelines, months, years. The kind of future I wanted him to grow into. The kind of man I'd have to become so I could stand in front of him one day and feel honest about who I was. I still didn't have everything figured out, but I was no longer reacting to fatherhood. I was inhabiting it. And for the first time, I felt less like a boy scrambling to keep up and more like someone building something solid, one dependable moment at a time. Some days victory came in ways no one would notice but me. A diaper changed without disaster, a feeding completed without tears, a nap taken without me pacing nervously outside the crib. These weren't headline-worthy accomplishments, but they were everything. I started noticing the patterns in his behavior, learning how to soothe him when he was fussy, how to make him laugh when he was frustrated. I could anticipate his needs sometimes, and it felt like magic, like a secret handshake between us that only we knew. There were milestones too, that his first laugh that wasn't forced, his first wobbly steps, the way he clapped when he was excited. I cheered quietly in my chest, proud in a way I hadn't thought possible. These night wins reminded me that I could do this, that I was doing this. Even the hard days began to feel meaningful. Every sleepless night, every doubt-filled morning, every tiny failure was building something bigger than me, a foundation of trust, of love, of being present. I realized that growing up wasn't about having everything perfect. It was about showing up over and over for the person who depended on me the most. And in that repetition, I found my rhythm and slowly my confidence. Fatherhood taught me things I never expected to learn about myself. I discovered patience I didn't know I had, a stubbornness to keep trying even when everything went wrong, and a tenderness I had thought was only for fiction or movies. I also discovered fear in a new form. It wasn't just fear of failing myself anymore, it was fear of failing him. Every cough, every cry in the night, every minor scrape carried a weight I hadn't felt before. But that fear didn't paralyze me. It guided me. It pushed me to be better, to think ahead, to listen more closely. He taught me more than I ever thought a baby could. How to slow down and notice small things, a giggle, a new expression, the way sunlight hits his hair. How to find joy in repetition, in routine, in a urinary. How to forgive myself when I was tired or impatient or scared. I started seeing the world differently. Life became less about chasing ambitions or appearances and more about presence. The kind of person I wanted to be wasn't someone who succeeded in the ways society praised. It was someone he could trust, someone he could feel safe with, someone who showed up even when it was hard. In teaching me these lessons, he had unknowingly become my first real teacher in growing up. My life no longer followed the patterns I once took for granted. Spontaneity had been replaced by schedules, late nights replaced by early mornings, and carefree weekends replaced by playgrounds, grocery runs, and story time. At first, it felt like a loss. I mourned the freedom I once had, the ease of a life without tiny, urgent needs tugging at every moment. But gradually, I saw the value in the redesign. I was more disciplined, more organized, more thoughtful. My priorities shifted without me even noticing. Bills got paid on time, meals became intentional, and my relationships deepened with people who supported me and my son. I learned to celebrate the small victories, getting him to sleep without tears, helping him learn a new word, or even surviving a whole day without yelling. These moments became my markers of success, more meaningful than anything I had chased before. I realized my old life wasn't lost, it had transformed. It had evolved into something bigger, something that held another human being's happiness and security. And in that transformation, I discovered a new version of myself, a man who could be trusted, who could nurture, who could grow alongside the child I had once feared I wasn't ready for. There are days when fatherhood hits me all at once like a wave I wasn't prepared for. Not the hard days, the sleepless nights, or the mistakes, but the quiet, ordinary moments that suddenly feel monumental. The first time he called me daddy, mispronounced and stumbling over the word, I felt my chest tighten so much I thought I might cry. The first time he fell asleep on my shoulder without forcing, I couldn't move for fear of breaking the fragile peace. The way he looks at me sometimes with wide eyes full of trust is enough to remind me why every sacrifice, every doubt, every exhaustion has been worth it. These moments are fleeting, often so small that I almost miss them if I'm not paying attention. But they linger. They remind me that love isn't always loud or obvious. It's in the quiet and the steady presence and the little victories that pass without fanfare. And in these moments, I feel something I never expected when I first found out I was a father, a profound joy that takes your breath away, a feeling that even in the chaos and the mistakes, I am exactly where I'm meant to be. Looking back now, I barely recognize the person I was before that phone call. I was scared, uncertain, and unprepared. I thought adulthood was something you stepped into when you felt ready. Fatherhood taught me that sometimes adulthood chooses you, and you have to rise to it, whether you're ready or not. I'm still learning every day. I still make mistakes. I still get exhausted and doubt myself. But I've discovered that growing up isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, taking responsibility, and being present even when it's hard. Every smile, every small word, every quiet moment of trust reminds me that this path, however unexpected, is worth it. My life is no longer mine alone. It's shared, rich, and full in ways I never imagined. Becoming a father didn't just change my life, it made me see who I could be. And in that, I've found a beginning I never expected, a chance to grow into the man I want to be, one day at a time. It's terrifying, it's exhausting, but it's also the most real and joyful thing I've ever known.